First of all, thank you to Josh and to Terry to setting this up. We've been, our movement's been going on for like 3 years so it's awesome to see this big of a response. Because we've been doing things in Crook County and trying to get going in Crook County for a while and not been able to. So to see this many people here is awesome. It's great. So thank you, Josh, for getting this out, blasting it out to Facebook and everything. And I really wanted this tonight to be, Josh kind of asked me, what's going on? And I think that's the question a lot of people in Crook County have is what's going on? You see, Greater Idaho's stuff's happening. It's in the news. You're seeing that within Idaho House and all these things. And there's always this blank spot where Crook County is and what's going on with Crook County. So I wanted tonight just to be an informational, a chance for us to kind of talk about what is happening in Crook County, what's happening with movement in general, what's happening in Crook County, and then I really want to leave a lot of time for people to ask questions because I know there's a lot of questions about this. So we're going to do I'm going to have our president is here today, Mike McCarter, and so I'm going to have him start us off and give us just like a brief background of the movement and where we're at, what the process is, and where we're at in that process, and then I'll come up again and I'll talk about where we're at in Crook County, kind of the history of what's happened in Crook County, and what our next steps are as far as what we do in Crook County. So, and then I also wanted to just point out, I'm not sure where they went, but two people, here we go. Two of our leadership team folks, Matt McCaw here in the tan, and this is Sandy Gilson. They've been working on this hard for a long time. So they're here tonight also. So after we're all done and Q&A, as people are filtering out, if you want to grab somebody who's been in this and doing this for a while and can answer your questions, these two would be great, or me or Mike. So, Mike, you want to come up and get us started? And I set agendas out. I only printed up 50, so I don't know if you were able to get them. It's just kind of a loose agenda and a place for you to kind of keep track of where we're at or take notes if you want to. And I have my son set them out in the back. So if you got one, great. If not, maybe CJ, maybe you could.
Thanks, Matt. I guess if there's anybody that's been in it longer than me, we're in trouble here. My name is Mike McCarter. Give you a quick background. I am a born and raised third-generation Oregonian, veteran during Vietnam, 30 years in agriculture. I love Oregon. I do. I just have a problem with how it's being led. Not only right now, but for years. It's taken us down this path. And that's what started the Move Oregon Border movement. And really, I've got to say, I'm a born believer. I believe in Jesus Christ, my Lord and Savior. God's hand is in this.
Amen.
Because this is a faith-based, for the most part, movement. It's not political. It's not corporate. It's not by politicians. It's by grassroots Oregonians that are behind this. And that's sort of what drew me to a little poster on a bulletin board in the Lapine Library. It said, there's some people that want to get together at Ponderosa Pizza and talk about the problems with what's going on in Oregon. And I thought, that's kind of strange to see something like that. But it caught my attention. And I went to that. And it was some folks from Josephine County, Jackson County, Klamath County, Deschutes County that were there and had been meeting on Facebook and talking things over. And the topic started going, what could we do to maybe change some of it? A second meeting took place in November, and finally in December we decided to form Move Oregon's Border. Now, we did not want to talk anybody into anything with this organization, with this movement. We wanted to find out if the people in the county felt the same way we did, and if there's something we could do to change that. And so we came up with the idea, well, we believe that our next door neighbor to the east of us, Idaho, their values line up better with our values than those in Western Oregon and those that are calling the shots right now. So we decided to go county by county and ask the people, would you like your county leaders to start looking into the possibility of your county becoming a county of Idaho? It was not a vote in most all of those counties to say, okay, we're going to move to Idaho. That's not what it was about. It's an open the door topic. We want to find out. There's a lot of things that questions that people have that can't be answered at our level. They have to be answered at the state level between Oregon and Idaho. So right now, we're fighting on 4 fronts. We're fighting on our front here in Eastern Oregon. People think this will never happen. It can't work. There's too many things going on. Folks, if you don't try, how are you going to know whether it'll work? Absolutely. We're fighting with...
It's our job.
Yeah. We're fighting with Idaho.
And
Now,
it's our
why-
job, when your government is not taking care of you and not representing you, it is your job to do this.
Yes.
Am I wrong?
You are not wrong at all.
That's what I'm saying.
We're fighting a front on Idaho. Why would Idaho want to take us? What are the advantages?
There's a lot of advantages that they could have could back.
But that battle is an informative battle, just like tonight, to inform the people of those advantages. We're fighting with the west side. Why would you let us go? Situation.
They're not representatives. It doesn't matter. It's the people that have to make this decision.
Agreed.
It starts with the county. It's the people, the county.
I know.
And then the state, and then the feds, and we've got it all ass backwards.
Can we listen to our speaker?
I've been irritated since I started getting into this, and I'm just like,
I know you're fired up. Okay.
Let's listen to our speaker.
And we'll try to handle some of that. Okay. The fourth battle that we're working with is the urban folks in Portland. The folks that passed Measure 114. That was not a legislative deal. I'm not going to put them down because they felt that was the way that they could hopefully try to solve some of their problems, and so they moved it through. However, it affects us on this side of the mountain too. So when we launched that in January of 2020 with the petitions, we aimed at 19 counties. If all 19 counties had allowed us to have a petition, we would have gone down in flames. We don't have the money. We didn't have, it was a brand new message out there. And so we managed, even with COVID coming in, to get it passed in 2 counties. We lost in 2 counties. We lost in 1 county by 40 votes to it. And we're back in there in May, and we believe it'll pass with no problem on it. But all the time, as our people, our leadership in Move Oregon Supporter got together, we prayed that God, we want to follow your plan. Please open the doors where they need to be opened and close the doors where they need to be closed. They closed a bunch of doors in these counties. It was very hard to get a petition through in a lot of counties. It was very hard to collect signatures during COVID. Who wants to come up and sign a petition when you got this thing going on out there with it? But we kept working at it, and we're going to continue to keep working at it. It is amazing. It is amazing where it has gone. We have thousands of supporters now through Eastern Oregon. We have thousands of supporters around the world. We are in the worldwide media attention. Little old Oregon sitting over here. What's going on with them? With it? I don't know how that would ever happen at all. It's not something we could plan, because we don't have a playbook that we're working by, because nobody else has done it before us this way. So we're working our way through, and sometimes it's 2 steps forward and 1 step back with it. But we keep moving forward. I have a couple of statements that I go by. Number 1, what you believe determines where you spend eternity. The second one is what you believe determines what you do. And if you believe that this can happen, and it can happen, there's no reason why it can't happen.
Come on.
It can happen. Then you go out and you knock on the doors and you talk to people and you travel across the state and you meet with people and so on. Yeah. Do we put up with criticism? Yes, we do on it. But it's our job to take and convert that criticism to a positive thing, at least allow people to open their brains up with it. So thank you, folks from Crook County, for coming out tonight on it. There's still some counties over here that are working hard. Right now, there's a big fire burning in Gilliam County. They're hot to trot. All 1,200 of them. No, just kidding. I know there's more people. And I get telephone calls. Wasco County is on fire right now for us. How can we get involved? What can we do? Type things. So, hang in there. Matt is from here in this area and is working hard at it, and there's some other people that are working hard at it. I'm behind you, that's for sure, with it. I tried to step back and resign my role. Just step down a little bit. 75 years old, I want to go play a little bit and so on. Matt wouldn't let me do it. He said, no, you've got to stick with it.
I'm glad you're here.
Yeah.
Really
I'm not giving up at all. We're out there, we're talking. At least I don't have to go in front of the news media anymore, thanks to Matt. So, thank you folks for coming out. Thank you for listening to me and all. And here you go, Matt.
For kind of giving us a background. So I wanted to just clarify a couple things that Mike brought up. The process, I don't want to get too in the weeds on process, but it's important for people to understand that a border is an imaginary line. A border is a tool. There's nothing sacred about it. It was placed there 164 years ago because 164 years ago it made sense for that border to be where it was. But they can move, and they have moved in the history of the United States multiple times, as recently in Oregon and Washington in 1958. So there's a process for moving a border. So it's when we talk about moving the border, it's not like it's this crazy idea that is way out in left field. It was assumed that states would change their borders, and as I said, they have. So the process for that is that any 2 states can change their state border by getting together the 2 state legislatures and deciding that where the border's at doesn't make sense, and it'd make more sense to put it here. And it really, it's not simple, but it really is that simple in the sense of any 2 states can do that, and it just takes the 2 state legislatures to do that. So the process for Move Oregon's Border / Greater Idaho all along was Mike and his people had this idea, and they had to see if people would support this idea. So they went county to county, and they've been going county to county all through Eastern Oregon and Southern Oregon, and asking voters directly, do you want your elected leaders to look into this? And so far, we have had 11 counties in Eastern Oregon that have voted, yes, we do, we want to move this forward. And we're winning in Eastern Oregon, and we're winning strongly in Eastern Oregon. As Mike mentioned, had he gotten all 19 counties when he first started this thing, and I wasn't involved in the movement at that point, nobody knew who we were, there was no money, it probably would have gone down in flames and just been over. Luckily, the Lord had a different path for our movement, and we've kind of slow-rolled these counties out, and that's allowed us to inform people and build momentum. So we've got 11 counties in Eastern Oregon. You may know that our proposal used to include, if you look at this little map that's on your piece of paper, it's only Eastern Oregon now. That proposal used to include Southern Oregon. We went to a vote in Southern Oregon 3 times in 2 counties, and we lost all 3 of those votes. And so Mike mentioned this, that we don't want to be a movement that's forcing anybody to do anything. We're trying to match people up to government that they want, that matches their values, and not drag anybody into anything they don't want. So when we lost those counties, even though they were close, we made the decision as an organization to scale back our proposal and just focus on Eastern Oregon. So that all being said, after getting 11 of the 15 counties that we're looking to move, 15 full counties, having 11 of them say, yes, we want our leaders to look into this, we have moved this now to the state legislative level. And that's where the decision-making has to happen. So the counties, the role of the counties is to advocate for their citizens, is to advocate for what specific things, when Crook County gets a chance to vote on this, and I do feel confident that we will get a chance to vote on this, and I feel confident that we'll get the result that I'm happy with. The job for us is going to be when we're having these discussions, when these 2 state legislatures get together, what specific to Crook County do we want to make sure we're advocating for? And that's true of each county. Each county is going to have their own things. But we have moved this to the state legislative level, and that's probably why you've heard so much about our organization lately, is because we have a memorial in the Idaho legislature that basically invites the state of Oregon to begin talks about where it would make sense to move the border. So that passed the Idaho House a couple weeks ago, and that's moved on to the Idaho Senate. So we're talking to senators in Idaho, and we have a lot of support in Idaho at the legislative level. They see a lot of benefits to we're talking about moving 400,000 Eastern Oregonians into Idaho governance, and Idaho legislators see the value in that. They see the value in all this land, all this resources. They see the value in 400,000 like-minded voters. Idaho is very conservative. Eastern Oregon is even more conservative than Idaho. So they see the value in that, getting all these like-minded folks with them. It pushes Oregon law further away. There's a lot of benefits for Idaho. So we're moving forward, and we're making progress in Idaho, and it's awesome, and that's going great. We also have a similar bill. It's a memorial that invites the Idaho legislature to begin talks with the state of Oregon. And that has been introduced in the Oregon Senate by Senator Linthicum, who used to be our senator here in Crook County, who's no longer our senator, but he has been a champion for us, and he has introduced that memorial, and it's sitting on the Senate president's desk, essentially, and not going anywhere. But that's where we're at. This is moving forward, and it's moving forward at a state level, and it's kind of gone to the next step. So I'm sure a lot of you in here are here because you're wondering, and I get this question a lot. There's these counties that are white on the map. They're not filled in. Why isn't Crook County, what are they doing? What's going on in Fielding County? What's going on in these counties? So I can speak to that. I've been involved in this movement for a couple of years. After COVID, after the 2020 election, I've never been involved in politics at all, other than just paying attention, listening to podcasts, whatever, like a lot of us. It's like, I got to do something, right? We just came through COVID. I got to do something. So I was looking for a way to get involved politically in my community. I found this movement, and the first thing I did is I called Judge Crawford, and I said, Judge Crawford, what's going on? How come in Crook County we haven't had why haven't we had a chance to vote on this? And so he explained to me kind of the process. And so what we've done to get these initiatives into the different Eastern Oregon counties. So the way Oregon law works is that you can get a citizen-led petition, but there's a lot of details to it, and it's very technical, and it has to be worded a certain way, and it has to be legislative and not administrative, and there's all these legal pieces. So we submitted kind of very similar petitions all across the state. Most county clerks, most county councils approved those and let us start gathering signatures. In Crook County, that was not approved. For whatever reason, county clerk, county council felt like it did not meet the legal specifications it needed to be put on the ballot. So let me roll this out, just finish this real quick, and then I'll come to you. So I was not involved.
Do you want me to wait till the end, or should I throw in? Because I think you skipped a really big step that is a big part of why were in this situation, is that it was taken to the circuit court.
So I was just going to get to that.
Just make sure that, because I think that's really clear. That's
Judge, I'm gonna try to give as straight of airing of the facts as possible, and then if there's something that you feel like I'm misrepresenting, or I will give you your opportunity. So, so those original petitions went out, and the clerk or county council said this does not meet our specifications. It's not legal. You cannot circulate it. There was some sort of legal fight at that point, and Mike could talk to that, Judge Crawford could talk to that, where I don't know if the movement actually sued or we challenged that, and we went into district level court.
That's the way the state statutes are. The next step, if you don't agree, then you take it to the circuit court.
Right. So we went to the circuit court, and the circuit court ruled with the county. So we were not allowed to circulate that petition. So,
and real quick, that was past Speaker. I was supposed to be quiet. That was past Speaker of the House, Mike McCaw, past Republican. So I mean, it's not like it was. I mean, I assume it was appointed by Kate Brown, but it wasn't like a far left judge that was out to get the organization. It was somebody that was part of our crew. He lives in Powell Butte. He's not a wingnut, is what I'm trying to say. Is the judge that shot this down was on procedure. It wasn't on passion or belief. And I think that's something. That's why I'm here tonight. Is so that, because I don't feel like that story is being told very well. Is that it's not the Crook County Court that's shooting these down. And actually, we've approved 2 of them. They just need 667 signatures.
Well, so
we're moving forward. Yeah, I'll let you go.
So anyways, there was a court battle about this. The county won. We were not able to circulate our petition. So when people say, why wasn't Crook County able to do this and everybody else was? It was because in these other counties, they approved the petitions and they were able to move forward and collect signatures. In Crook County, we were not. And you know, so that's that. So we have submitted multiple petitions trying to find petitions that will get approved by the county council and by the county clerk. There has been, I'm not aware of a second, but I'm aware of a single petition that was finally approved last year to be circulated for petitions. So Judge, you said there was 2.
Do you want me to, I can read the titles aren't great, but they are approved. So,
well, I know the one about the records. So
the other one is hindering state border relocation consideration prohibited. But so that's closer, right? And I've had conversation. We need to dig into it more, but I think if we would to sit down together, because the last time we talked, we asked you to go out for signatures, and we haven't really heard anything since. But
so let's maybe me and you can talk later with the because
I know because I think these people need to hear it because I think they're getting a lot of information.
Well, I want to get the information.
The county's not interested in working with you.
Well, so let me finish getting the information out here, Judge, if I could. So we have submitted multiple petitions. Finally, last year, we were approved after many petitions. We were approved for a petition that the wording was about elected leaders could not deny providing records.
Do you want me to read
requested.
the other one? I got the other one right here.
No, I just... So last year, there was a lot of momentum to try to get this on the ballot in Crook County. And so we had, meetings not this big, but we had meetings like this at county court meetings. We hosted a meeting over by the fairgrounds, and with the idea of how do we get this on the ballot in Crook County. So in one of those meetings at the normal court meeting, we got this petition approved, which was to collect signatures for a it has to do with records requests, and I personally asked the commissioners that if we went out and we collected these signatures and we got this on the ballot and we passed it, would you see this as a mandate to advocate moving the border? And I was told no. So my response was, well, then I'm not going to spend the time and the money to go do all this legwork if the commissioners are not going to then acknowledge that this is the people saying they want this to happen. So there has been a petition that has been approved. Our organization has chosen not to move forward getting petitions or getting signatures for that petition. because of what I just said. It's a lot of man hours and it's a lot of money to do that, and we don't see what the point would be to go through all of that and then go to a county court and have the commissioners say, that doesn't mean anything. That was a vote on records requests. So what we have asked the court to do repeatedly over the course of the last year is we have asked the court to put a advisory question on the ballot. So in the state of Oregon, advisory questions are put on the ballot by counties and cities, and that happens multiple times. It happens multiple times a year. So we have asked the county court to do that. The county court has come back and said that legally, the official response was legally, this is a gray area. It could potentially put the county in some sort of financial jeopardy. That has been your guys' position.
Fair point. Yeah.
So the court has said we will not put an advisory question on the ballot for these reasons. And there was outside counsel brought in, and it was a little, I won't say contentious. It wasn't contentious, but it was there was a lot of conversation about with the lawyer and at meetings about whether the court should put this forward. So that is why an advisory question hasn't been put on the ballot. And just so people know, any county court, the only way you can ask people directly an advisory question is if the court does that. We can't do that. So we would love to be able to get a petition that just says, do you want to move the border, or do you want your elected leaders to move the border? We'd love to be able to directly ask people that. That's not the way the law is set. County courts can, and county courts do. So while it may be a legal gray area, there are county courts across this state asking their voters this exact question. And we just had one in the last election, and we had one in the election before that, where last election, Wheeler County put a direct advisory question to the voters, and their voters passed that advisory question 59% in favor. The election before that, Josephine County put an advisory question directly to the ballot to their voters, asking if they wanted to move forward, and that one actually lost 51-49. But the important thing is the people in those counties got to have their say. And that's what our position has been all along, is that we want the people of Crook County to have a say on this. Do you guys want to be part of this or not? Do you want your elected leaders to move forward with this or not? So that I had a group that I was leading that was meeting once a month for several months, and some of you were part of that. When we weren't getting any traction in getting an advisory question on the ballot, and we weren't getting any traction getting a petition that was going to be meaningful and worthwhile, we kind of stopped and decided that we were going to put our efforts towards a statewide movement. And so that's why nothing has really happened in Crook County for the last year. So that's the history here in Crook County. That's why we haven't had a chance to vote on it yet. Judge?
Yeah. So
was that a fair representation?
Fair representation. I mean, the only thing I would add is that we brought in that additional attorney to try and find some different avenues to be able to do it, to work together. And again, our belief was that out of the two options, that there was something salvageable that could be a question that would satisfy you and be able to be voted on by the people. At no time have we said we don't want this to go on the ballot. I think we've wanted to follow the rules and go through the process, but I don't think at any moment have we said we don't want to see the people vote on this. Can we agree to that?
Yes, we can agree to that. You have said that you were willing to have the people vote on specific measures, but that would not be recognized as advocating for wanting to move the border. So, I mean, that's where we're at. And so our position in Crook County at this point is we would again ask, this movement's moving forward with or without Crook County. We're moving forward at the state legislative level. We would love to know what the people of Crook County think. And the best way to know what the people of Crook County think is to ask them directly. And in this country, that's done at the ballot box. And when you've done it at the ballot box, it's not a poll. It's not, going around collecting signatures. You ask everybody to vote, and what they say goes. That would be our preferred mechanism to know if Crook County wants to be part of this and wants to move forward as looking at moving the border. So with that, there's this thing about how people can get involved, but I want to open it up to Q&A right now and address it. I've seen some hands, and so I'll circle back and we'll talk about how people can get involved after that, but let's go ahead and do some
Can I just
questions.
give a quick wrap up too on what kind of where the county's at with things?
That would be great.
As well, just so we kind of everybody knows where we're at. So we've definitely heard everybody. We, prior to this, expected that you guys were gathering signatures and doing those things. That clearly is not the direction you guys want to go. We are happy to sit down and work with you on that other question. If you put the state of Oregon and state of Idaho in there, that starts to seem a lot more clear what things we're talking about. We've also brought in yet another attorney. I know nobody likes attorneys, but one of the reasons we have to go through all this is that we have been turned down by circuit court, and that we understand that there's problems with these issues, and we've heard from people that this could be legally liable for the county, and so we need to make sure that we cross the T's and dot the I's, and make sure that all those things are taken care of before we move forward.
Can you explain the liability? What are you entailing as a liability? Is it a monetary liability? Is it a what? So how?
So the
how
county,
could that happen?
that could be, we could be sued for the cost of the election and the cost of moving forward with that ballot measure.
So the cost of printing ballots?
It's probably $25,000 to $60,000. I mean, it's not just printing ballots; it's going through the whole process.
How much are we paying for the lawyers?
Well, the past one was pro bono, so we didn't pay anything for that.
I just think we need to be able to have a right to say. You said that you guys would have the right to say. I think we should have the right to say. I'm just saying.
No. I totally agree with you.
Okay.
And please don't take
I mean,
my.
$60,000. I mean, we
Yeah.
pay for a lot of stuff. I mean,
Yeah, I hear you. I'm saying I think we're all arguing the same point, that we want to see what the people of Crook County want to do. The county is just, we're locked into, hold on, buddy. We're locked into more rules than the average citizen just saying we want this to happen.
Hasn't the other two counties set precedents on that though by not being sued?
No.
I mean, two counties have already done it that way and have not been sued.
No, it's totally up to whoever wants to take
Who do you
and
see
file.
that person being?
People from the other side of the political realm that don't want to see these things.
So
move forward.
Josephine County lost.
Yeah,
There's 59% of them said no.
yeah.
Not one person filed a lawsuit.
Yeah, no, and not everybody.
And just so I don't. So what I
yeah, let's.
I don't want this to get into. There's a time and a place to have this conversation with the court, and I think it'd be good to have this with the whole court.
Yeah, and I want to
encourage
and
people.
again, this
to,
is
right.
just not just me. This is the
Yeah,
entire court
and we've
that
had
wants to see this.
and we've
move
had this
forward.
conversation. We
And
had a
we've
whole
talked-
like 45
Right, yeah,
minutes,
we have.
You know,
Yeah, and
so I want to
real quick though is what we're saying is we're getting yet another legal opinion, and we're hoping to work with you to figure out what will work for you and be able to get it on the ballot and get this thing done.
Okay. Great. Well, thank you, Judge, for being here and for explaining and for letting us know where the court stands. So, and I, like I said, we've kind of been through this before about, well, we've been through this a year ago with what the court should do or why aren't they doing it. So I don't want to spend too much time on it tonight, but I do want to open it up for questions and answers about our movement in any ways, just any questions that you might have. Yes.
Okay, well, Seth, I was at one of the county court meetings where an attorney who was a specialist in election law
Yeah.
was there, and this group was here also, and that attorney spent 45 minutes of the hour explaining his expertise, and then at the end said, I don't have an answer. I can't tell you whether it's legal to put it on the ballot or not. And then the courts told this group to go to the Attorney General and ask what they say. But we never heard from them as far as I know, right?
They never responded to
They
us,
never
which is also
responded.
extremely frustrating.
So now the county is hiring another attorney to ask the same question or to help figure out how to get it on the ballot.
Yes.
to help figure out how to get it on the ballot.
Yes.
I just,
No, I know it's frustrating.
do
Yeah.
we have a timeline on when that attorney is going to be?
I should have some information by the middle of next week.
Okay, and you guys will follow up on that.
Will that go on this November's ballot?
If there's election, if not, we would have to do a special election. I mean, that's a conversation we can have. It may cost the county more money if it's the only item on the election, and then. But I'm open. The court is open.
So what's
Hey
the role of the
folks,
county
hey
clerk?
folks, in all of these elections, we have been acutely aware of the cost of running an election. And we have stalled some elections and put our measure in when we knew that they were going to do a school budget or it was a presidential election or some other election, because he's right, it is an expensive issue. So we look at that and say, we even ask a question. Are you going to have a school board election? Are you going to have commissioners voting or whatever? And in that particular case, then we'll go ahead and slide it in there if we've got the signatures to do it. But we don't want to, I mean, we're dealing right now with Gillian County and going into November if we can. But if there's no election, here you've got a really small county. That's an expensive process. So we might hold it off until May to a major election with it. So we're acutely aware of the cost.
But we're willing to have a conversation of what that looks like and what the community wants. And, yeah, so
You've been very patient.
I'm a constitutional guy. So, the way the Constitution of the United States is written is people first, then the county, then the state, and then the federal government. I worked 21 years for ODOT. And I had to go to an ODOT class, and she told me, I go, why are we having to do all these rules? She goes, because the federal government has a lot of money, and they give it to you, to the states, to the counties. And I'm like, well, quit taking their money, then we don't have to put up with their bullcrap rules, because it's going to run me out of business in 5 seconds. My question is, if it's people first, then the county, or the city, and then the county, and then the state, and then the feds, why are we playing around with this facade of that we have to go by the feds' rules? We need to take our power back as people. And that's the whole thing is, we have the power. Everyone in this room has more power than any county. You know what I'm saying? And we have to remember this because we are totally ass backwards because we're taking funds from feds and state and they're giving us money, so we have to abide by their rules, and all it does is kill everyone in this room. And that's what people got to remember, is we are in charge of our government. That's the way it's set up. So I don't understand this law and all this stuff. You have to say, no, no, no. We are in charge. Everybody in this room is in charge of what's going on. And I'm sorry that I got a little upset.
No, that's okay. I actually think I think that we're on the same page here.
I'm just saying, the Constitution says the people are in charge. That's the way it's laid out.
So I think that a lot of us are on the same page. So what we're trying to do with this movement is and I think the genius of this movement that's made it successful and has allowed us to get as far as we've gotten is that this really is citizen driven. This is asking people directly. We've gone to voters. This isn't some idea that's trying to be forced on people. We've gone to voters and said, do you want us to do this? We think this is a good idea. Do you think this is a good idea? And that's what's given it its power, and that's why you're seeing these elected leaders at the state level who ignored us 2 years ago, and we have very, very few state legislators that were willing to even,
And they like it.
think about supporting us. That is changing because what they're seeing is the people are voting and the people are saying, we want this. And once you've got that popular support, then the elected leaders come along after the fact. So this is a citizen, it's a grassroots citizen-led movement, and we get our momentum and our power from going directly to the people and hearing what they want to do.
So, what you guys are doing. You're all great.
Well, thank you. Yeah, you had your hand up next.
I want to get a clarification on one thing and then ask a question. When we're talking about a ballot measure, we're talking about a referendum. And a referendum doesn't have any direct power, it's an influence tool. If it passes, it tells whoever your legislative bodies, this is how they feel. It doesn't change anything other than possibly influence. But the one question I got was, I'm excited about all this stuff because I don't like parliamentary area control in our life. But before I get all excited about this stuff, I want to know two things. What incentive does Oregon have to dispense with us? And what incentive does Idaho have to absorb us?
Great questions. Both great questions.
Because that's nothing in the change.
Okay, so the question was, what are the advantages? Why would Idaho take us, and why would Oregon let us go? And so there's actually several reasons on both fronts. So I'll start with Idaho because they're further along in the process. So in Idaho, the leaders there and the people, there's been polling done in the state of Idaho, and they asked people, would you want to absorb these eastern Oregon counties that are culturally and politically similar to you and would help your economy? And people voted 2-1 in favor. Yes, we would want to do that. So there's popular support. We're talking about moving 400,000 very like-minded people into the governance of Idaho, and the legislature in Idaho very much sees the value in that. Idaho is a very conservative state. They want to stay a very conservative state, and bringing 400,000 like-minded people into their state would help them stay Idaho. And so they see the value in that. There was an economic analysis that was done by the Claremont Institute. If anybody's familiar with the Claremont Institute, they've been working on an economic analysis for the last year plus. It came out, just 2.5, 3 weeks ago. It finally came out, and it showed that it's complicated, but Eastern Oregon is not as wealthy as Western Oregon. But Eastern Oregon is almost exactly like Idaho. Economically, average income-wise, politically, culturally, socially. So because Idaho has a different tax structure, and because we are so similar economically to Idaho, Idaho could take in these 15 Eastern Oregon counties, and it would not be a drain on the state of Idaho. In fact, it could be an economic boom for the state of Idaho and add money to their tax revenue. The economic analysis also said that Eastern Oregon counties their economies would surge. So getting into a low regulatory, low tax environment, Eastern Oregon counties would take off, up and above what they would do if they stayed part of Oregon. So it would be a win tax-wise for Idaho. It would be a win for Eastern Oregon counties.
Well, you're also assuming this thing that Oregon just says, have a nice day.
Well,
they have, are you taking into account the amount of land the state owns? They're giving that to you?
So I will address the Oregon part, but I wanted to finish up on why is Idaho even considering this? So those are a couple of reasons. Another reason is Idaho has been one of the fastest growing states in the union for the last 5 years. So basically since COVID hit, people have been pouring into Idaho from all these West Coast states who were hard locked down, and people are seeking out, like-minded people and like-minded government in Idaho. It's been a huge strain on Idaho to have all this influx of people. Adding all this land in Oregon would take the pressure off of the Boise area and the Treasure Valley. It would give a lot more room for these political refugees to pour into. They could pour into Central Oregon instead of having to pour into Boise like they do now. So they see the value in that. And then the last thing that we heard a lot, so I was in Boise 2 weeks ago to meet with legislators, and one of the things I heard probably the most was this would get Oregon law 300 miles away further from where they are now. So Idahoans do not have legalized marijuana, they don't have legalized hard drugs, and they don't want legalized hard drugs, and they don't want legalized marijuana. And they have that now 45 minutes from their major population center because the Oregon policy takes it right up to the border. And it causes huge problems. And it's causing big problems for Idaho, it's causing big problems for those border communities. So pushing Oregon law back over the Cascades would be a huge win for the state of Idaho, and they would, and it'd be a huge win for the people of Eastern Oregon because the people of Eastern Oregon voted against those measures. The people of Eastern Oregon, I don't think there was a single county that voted in favor of the legalized hard drugs measure 110. That was policy that was forced on us by the West Side. So it would get that pushed back over on the West Side where they want that policy, and that's fine. If they want that policy, that's what is better for them. That's their thing. So why would Oregon let us go? That's a huge question. Why would they let us go? So first and foremost, economically. So although Eastern Oregon counties are incredibly similar to Idaho and they're about the same average income as Idaho counties, that's not true to Western Oregon counties. So Western Oregon is quite a bit wealthier than Eastern Oregon is. And because of the way we have an income tax here, the state collects money across the state, goes to Salem, and then it gets distributed back out. And when that happens, Western Oregon ends up subsidizing Eastern Oregon. And it's not a small number. It's $690 per taxpayer in Western Oregon per year. That's how many tax dollars they're sending to the east side of the state as a subsidy. So by letting Eastern Oregon counties go, Western Oregon keeps hundreds of millions of tax dollars at home in Western Oregon to spend on problems that are specific to Western Oregon, whether that's homelessness, drugs, this mental health things that they want to get going. They would have a whole lot more tax money that they wouldn't be sending to Eastern Oregon. They would have it in Western Oregon. They could do what they want with it. It would also reduce gridlock. So we all know in here probably, if you're aware politically at all, Measure 114, it passed in this last election, so that's the gun measure. Eastern Oregon voted, there's overwhelming and then there's overwhelming. It was like every county, 75, 80 plus % people voted against that measure. People in Eastern Oregon did not want Measure 114. We got Measure 114 because people on the west side of the state wanted it, and they have the numbers to force it on us. So people in Western Oregon feel like they need gun measures to keep their communities safe. People in Eastern Oregon didn't want it. That passed right away. A judge in Harney County put a flag on it, held it up, and so now Western Oregon can't get the policy that they need and that they want, that they think they need to make their communities safer, because Eastern Oregon is gumming it up. And it really goes back to why this is, the whole reason for our movement is that it doesn't make any sense to group two sets of people that are so different in almost every way. It doesn't make any sense for those people to be sharing the state government. And the only reason they share state government is because where a border was put 164 years ago. And so that border where it is does not function positively. It actually functions negatively. It causes problems. It causes strife where it currently is. If we move that border, you group like-minded people together. People in Western Oregon would have to go. They're very like-minded in Western Oregon. Western Oregon votes very similarly. It's not as extreme as it is over here, but for the most part, Western Oregon votes pretty left-leaning. And then you get over here and people vote very right-leaning and overwhelmingly right-leaning. So we could do away with all this political tension and all this strife by just moving the border and getting people matched up to government that they want, and then the gridlock goes away. The political tension goes away. And then lastly, why would Oregonians do this? Because people realize that this is a good idea. And the people want to have this conversation. So I mentioned there's polling done in Idaho. There's polling done in Idaho. They said, would you be willing to absorb 15 Eastern Oregon counties that vote like you and would help you economically? And over 2 to 1, they said yes. We would want to do that. Polling done. We have these 11 counties that have voted in Eastern Oregon, and we're winning those handily. Those aren't close. Our last 6 elections, none of them have been even remotely close. There was polling done in Western Oregon, northwestern Oregon, actually, in January of last year by Survey USA. And they asked people in northwest Oregon, should elected leaders look at moving the border and what that would mean for Oregonians? And in northwest Oregon, 68% of people said, yes, we should have this conversation. We should at least look into it and see if this would make sense for both sides of the state. What that tells us is that people understand the problem. If you've lived in Oregon for any amount of time in your life, you know there's a huge difference between the east side and the west side. And the people on both sides of the state understand that. They understand why it doesn't make sense for these two sides of the state to be playing tug-of-war over state government. So the popular support is there. And it has not translated into the legislative leaders yet on the west side, but the popular support is there from the people. And we're confident that once the people get behind something, and once public sentiment kind of tips in favor of something, it's almost an inevitable thing.
Getting back to my initial point of your financial analysis, anybody take into consideration they're not just going to give you the place?
Oh, thank you for reminding me. Yeah.
If you think anybody's going to give you the sheets rent for free, and there's too much relying on it, I mean, and all this state.
So you bring up a great question. And it's they're people you will hear and you will see in newspaper articles all sorts of things. Like there's been a number for a while. The number that was thrown around was $10 billion that Western Oregon would charge Idaho for this land, and then now it's up. Somebody I saw $20 billion was the last time I saw it. So something important to know. Eastern Oregon is almost 0% state-owned land. It's about, 1 or 2%? Little over 1% of Eastern Oregon is state-owned land. Half of the land in Eastern Oregon is owned by people. It's owned by me and you. It's owned by our neighbors, ranches, farms, so it's privately owned. 25% is BLM, 25% is USFS, federal government. So there's not really a lot of land. People kind of get stuck in this Louisiana Purchase. We're going to buy all this land for this much. That's not the way it would be. That land is already owned by the federal government, so it wouldn't really be affected. It's governed by the state of Oregon. It is not owned by the state of Oregon. They govern you own your land. They govern it, but Idaho could govern it just as well, and Idaho wouldn't have to pay anything to govern that. They wouldn't have to pay Oregon anything to govern that. So there would be things in the negotiations that would have to take place. There's assets, there's debts. Your state government, whether you like it or not, has spent money on your behalf and has racked up debts, but they also have assets. There's things that our communities own at the state level that would come with this or would be negotiated. So we're talking about moving 9% of the population. So it's about 400,000 people in Eastern Oregon that we have proposed to move into Idaho governance. So that 9% of the population, when the two states come together, they're going to hammer out all these details. They're going to say, okay, we'll move the border here. We'll move these into your governance. Here's the assets that are going to go with those people. Here's the debt obligations that are going to go with those people. And it's all going to be negotiated out. So what we've said as an organization is you're moving 9% of the people. It would make sense that the starting point is 9% of the state's assets, 9% of the state's debt obligations. We have paid for a lot of those assets with our taxes. So that snowplow, we help pay for that snowplow. So if we're going to change governance, it would only make sense that for those 9% of people, that the starting point would be 9% of the assets and debt. But again, the two states would hammer it out from there. And I know that we've had legislators in the state of Idaho say, we don't want to pay anything. If we can do this without having to spend billions of dollars, then we're all for it. But if it's going to, so I would expect those two states to come together and figure out where does it make sense, how does it make sense to transfer these assets and debt obligations. But there's nothing no reason to think that it would cost billions and billions of dollars for Idaho to do this. You had a question.
I did, and it's really nothing to do, a specific question, just this movement is having to do with the laws that are being passed around us. For example, I know California passed that law in 2035, there's no more diesel or something. Washington has followed through, right? And Oregon is set to follow. And so would that propel the movement? More people would sit up and take notice of it at that point, especially when, again, more food prices start to rise and the West people are like, wow, why is this so expensive again? So at that point, would more people stand up and be like, hey, this looks a lot better?
I think so. I mean, I think that's why this movement keeps building and keeps growing, is because every time they pass a new law that doesn't make sense for our communities and we don't want it, and it just shows that they don't understand our way of life and how we make a living and how this isn't going to work for us, it accentuates the difference between the two sides of the state and makes people understand this is, we got to have government. We got to have government that matches our values, or else our whole way of life is in danger. And just personally, for me, that was COVID for me. I actually lived in the Portland metro area at that time. I grew up in Bend, and I went over to the west side, and I was in the valley for a long time, and COVID hit, and it was just, it was apparent that the government has way too much control over my life. I better make sure that government shares my values. Otherwise, they can shut down my business, they can shut down my church, kick my kids out of school, and I didn't want any of that stuff. So I think you were next.
If you would. I think the mystery question of the evening, and I used to do a lot of radio, I've done some talk shows, is what does it take to get this on the ballot? When that is figured out, things will start happening, at least in my opinion.
Are you talking to get this on the ballot statewide, or are you talking to get this on the ballot just here in Crook County?
In Crook County.
In Crook County,
yes.
Okay. And I think the judge kind of addressed that, and we can talk more about that later as well.
Happy to have a conversation with anybody after.
Slightly different venue. I've noticed that as Western Oregon has gotten more and more dictatorial, it seems like I have less and less voice in Crook County. Under Idaho, would that change? Another issue would be, for example, school districts. Again, Western Oregon is forcing a lot of programs on my grandchildren that I do not like. Would those go away under Idaho? So we're coming back now, not necessarily to money, but in terms of individual liberty.
Well, yes, you would be under Idaho law instead of Oregon law. It would be the Idaho Department of Education would be setting the curriculum and the standards for your kids, and not the Oregon Department of Education. And I think most of us, probably most of us conservative, right-leaning people would much rather have the Idaho Department of Education standards than the Oregon Department of Education. So that's the whole point. Getting government that matches up with our values, and that's what that would do. And not only that, you talked about not having voice. In Oregon, we've been a supermajority. We're barely not a supermajority now, but we're still a big minority, and it's been that way a long time, a very long time, most of my adult life, outside of a very brief time where I think we were 50-50 in the House or something. If we were to become part of Idaho, be under Idaho governance, we'd be part of a majority, a supermajority. We would go from having no voice to having a seat at the table with decision making. And that would make a huge difference for our communities. Mike, did you?
So, this gentleman had the right question about it. The thing is tonight is how do we get it on the ballot? Now, I would like for you to rewind a little bit about what you discussed earlier when we were dealing with the court, where you're trying to get this on the ballot so we could vote on it. And you were told by the court or by a commissioner that no matter what the vote was, they were not going to advocate for this movement?
Come on.
Yeah,
there you go.
That's pretty close.
If our elected officials
advocate, that's a good word.
People, then we got to get some new officials.
So Mike, that conversation, so I said the court, there was only one commissioner that actually answered me. The other two did not answer at all. But I asked that direct question, like if we took this petition and we went to the trouble of passing it, would you see that as a mandate to then advocate for moving forward? And I was told no, I wouldn't. By the one commissioner, the other two commissioners didn't answer. But yeah, that is the crux of the problem. It's like we were trying to get the people. We want to hear what the people of Crook County think about this. And
if we tell you what we want, and we don't get elected officials to advocate for us,
We have no voice then.
Right.
We don't have a voice.
That is true. I think you had your hand up.
Yes. I'm actually from Sisters. Well, shoot me. Is there any hope of us getting a petition on the ballot? Is there a chance to get rid of vendors?
I'm sorry. So part of, again, the reason our proposal is drawn the way it is because we're trying to match people to government that matches their values. And Sisters Bend votes pretty left-leaning at this point, more so. And that, again, when we've met with legislators in Idaho, the last thing they want is to bring in people that aren't similarly minded. And so it's important to us to keep like-minded people as part of this. That's the whole goal.
It wouldn't be all of Deschutes County.
It would not be all of Deschutes County. So we cut around Sisters, Bend, and I think Redmond is included in our proposal, and Lapine. But again, a border is an imaginary line. It can go wherever it makes sense to go. So it doesn't have to go where we say. We think it makes sense to go where our proposal is, but the two states will sit down, and in the process of this happening, they may say, hey, you know what, let's do a referendum to sisters and see if they want to be part of it. Let's go directly to the people of the Pine and see if they want to be part of it. So that can go wherever it goes, wherever it makes sense to go. So it's not hopeless, but as long as your community is kind of votes left leaning, it wouldn't make sense to drag them into a state that's very conservative. That goes against the whole point of our movement.
So you can split a county?
You could, there'd be some difficulties with splitting a county, but again, it's an imaginary line. You put it where it makes sense, and so what we would advocate is, this hasn't happened in 164 years, so let's not cut corners. Let's put it where it makes sense to put it, even if that means having to, cut a county in half. Let's get people to the government that they want. It's probably going to stay there for another, how many decades, if not, another 164 years. So let's make sure we do it right. Yes, question.
I think you said in 1958 the border moved. What?
Yeah, so it was very slight, but there was the border between Oregon and Washington is the Columbia River, and there was some dispute about, I think the wording was something along the lines of the deepest part of the channel. Anyways, there was a dispute about where exactly that border was. And so the two states did exactly what the constitutional mechanism is the two states got together, they said, we're not exactly sure where the border is, let's hammer it down, so, where we both can agree that's where the border is. They did an interstate compact and set the border for good, and got it approved, and now that's where it is.
The river sounds like it's easier to...
Maybe rivers change is the problem. You can change course, and then you've got a problem. Yes?
All right. Two things. First of all, it seems to me you would have been better served by taking that one ballot that was approved, even if it didn't get passed, because if you would have got enough signatures for that, and then it was turned down by our local government, you have a great deal of leverage to make changes. Mm-hmm. The other thing that I would say is, I'm going to give you a prediction, not about when this is going to pass, but a prediction. By about 2030, we're going to have so many fewer rights than we have right now, especially when there's so much pressure from the left side of the state. 7 years ago, those of us that think back that far, 7 years we can do that. We'd think about things and we'd say, that never happened, that'll never happen. Look what we got. It's happened. In fact, it's happened. A lot of things have happened, like gun laws. I could never imagine that this would happen, and I grew up in Multnomah County, okay, and I never imagined something like that would happen, but there it is. It's not going to stop. They're going to get pushed. Like the silly one that we all said was the stupidest bill that ever came out, which is the one about how we had to treat cattle and how we had to, really, those of us that know what life is like in the ranching world, in the cattle world, we're saying, what kind of screwballs came up with that? That was just a test, folks. That was just a test to see how many other dummies they could find out that will vote for stuff like that. No, really, think about it. Anyway, I said that 2030. By 2030, if we don't make changes in this country, we won't have any rights. But in the meantime, we need to take advantage of the best ways we can do things to keep what rights we have. And I think that Idaho movement is the best one we have.
Well, thanks for those comments. I will address one thing real quick. Yeah, I agree. So, what we're trying to do at the county level is to get an idea if people want to move the border, if they want their elected leaders to pursue that. So we're trying to get that as clearly as we can. So if your wording gets too far away from that, and we've had this trouble with elected leaders in our state, where they say, well, people didn't really vote to move the border, they just voted to make their commissioners meet about it. And so it becomes then an excuse to not do anything if the wording is not as close to do you want to move the border as possible. So for us, the perfect scenario is an advisory question, because an advisory question is the one way you can directly ask people, do you want to move the border? And then for good or bad, yes or no, directly, and there's no guesswork and there's no, well, I don't think people really meant that, which is one of the things we've dealt with, unfortunately. Yes, yeah.
I'd like to know if there are people, county leadership, that are actively or not actively blocking this from happening. Who are the people we are opposing? Who are opposing us? I want names.
Who represent us?
So it depends on what you mean by blocking us. If you're talking about who's keeping us from putting an advisory question, that would be the county court. That'd be Judge Crawford and Commissioner Brummer and Commissioner.
So you would say that you are actively opposing us having a ballot measure or having an advisory question?
That might be what he says, but I say the other thing is I'm trying every avenue we can to try and find an opportunity to get it on there and to get a ballot measure so you guys can have your voices heard. So, I mean, I think that's the crux of this, and that's why I wanted to come tonight, because I hear a lot from this group saying that we're out there, the big bad government, trying to stop you guys, and we don't want to hear what you have to say. But that's not how we see it. We see it as we're trying to find ways within the law to put measures up so that you guys can hear your voices heard.
Right, but everything is optics, right?
Sure.
Well, whether you feel a certain way or not, optically outside of the rest of us, it appears that you guys are trying everything you possibly can to stop this from coming on the into the ballot.
Which is why I'm here.
So people I haven't heard from yet.
I was just going to say that it appears that you're trying to block us, and I just want to know, as a Crook County citizen, what we can do, because I've signed 2 or 3 petitions already saying yes, I want to vote, I want to vote.
Yeah.
People are saying that, and it appears that you're going nope.
So I
That's what it
think
appears.
No, I hear you.
our answer to that would be.
So what do we do?
So our answer to that, and what we tell our supporters, and what I was intending to tell you tonight, whether Judge Crawford was here or not, is if you want to have your say and you want it to be as direct as possible, ask your county commissioners, ask our county commissioners to put an advisory question on the ballot. Other counties have done it. Their own legal counsel was that it's a gray area. So they are being overly cautious, in my opinion, in not putting an advisory question. I presented Commissioner Varney with a list of over 20 advisory questions that had been put to the people over the course of the last decade in the state of Oregon, none of which, to my knowledge, have been challenged or any lawsuits over them. It is something that is done fairly regularly. Our court has chosen not to do that. Like I said, in my opinion, very overcautiously about it. The easiest way to get our voice heard would be to put an advisory question and just directly ask people. And get it over with and find out if we want to move forward with this or not. You had your hand raised for a while.
Yeah, I have a couple things I'd like to say. First of all, I hear Seth saying that he's willing to come to the table. I hear that. And so can we just get to the table?
Yeah.
You know, he's willing to meet you at the table. Let's get to the table. Second of all, I'd like to say is everybody in this room has a voice. Everybody in this room has a voice.
Absolutely.
And I challenge you to pick up the phone and call your legislatures and your county commissioners and call them. They pick up the phone. Email them. And I had the privilege of passing a law one time, and I know how it works. You know, if they get 40 emails that say yes, and they get 20 emails that say no, they're going with the 40. And you get a hold of everybody on both sides of the aisle. On both sides of the aisle. And I was just at the Capitol Monday with the Cattlemen's Association, and they are begging us, every one of them on both sides of the aisle. I had meetings with 11 of them that day. They're asking for us to please testify. Please send emails. They want to hear from us. They want to be educated. And I heard from several in Portland. They voted no on a lot of stuff that we would have liked to have them vote yes on, but they didn't understand it. And every one of them said, when I asked them, what can we do for you? Educate us. Let us know how you want us to vote. So we all have a vote, we all have a voice here, but you have to act on it. You can't just sit and complain about it And there's a gentleman in the room, Mike, is he still here? Mike Irwin, president of the Crook County Republican Party. The meeting is there every other Tuesday night at 6:30.
First and third Tuesday.
First and third Tuesday of the month. And if you want to learn learn how to use your voice, go to one of those meetings.
I'll be there on the 4th.
I would just say, absolutely, what you said about contacting state legislators, it absolutely is what we need people to do. If you want to know what can I do when I walk out of this meeting tonight, contact Representative Reese Iverson, contact Senator Finley, contact Judge Crawford, and Commissioner Barney, and Commissioner Brewer,
because they're already on your side. But you need to contact the rest of
them,
educate them.
But so even though we've had 11 counties in Eastern Oregon that have passed our measure, we only have one senator on the east side of the state that was willing to introduce something. And we didn't have any House members that were willing to introduce something. And that is a direct result that they have not heard from enough people saying, we want you to do this. They're cautious, understandably, sticking your neck out, doing something like this. They need to hear from people, and they need to hear from a lot of us. And if they heard from 100 people tomorrow, hey, what are you doing to help move that bill in the Senate forward? What are you doing to help, get these or move Oregon forward, advance? It would make a huge difference. So I would definitely agree with that.
Do you have the brochures that move Idaho?
See this guy after the meeting. So you had your hand up, and I want to get to you real quick.
What I keep hearing, and correct me if I'm wrong, what I keep hearing from you, Judge, is that there's a legal aspect to this, but I haven't heard any explanation as to what that legal aspect is regarding the wording of a measure or a question on the ballot. Now, do we want to, what's that legal wording?
So, it's been a while since we talked about this, about a year, so I'm a little rusty on some of this, but my understanding is there's been a couple similar measures that aren't exactly the same as what we're asking today that have happened in Western Oregon that have been challenged by people that don't agree with the measure or want to set precedents in the law of how you can ask questions. And that was what our concern was, that these were similar to those questions. And you're totally accurate that it was a gray area, but I feel like that gray area is made darker by the fact that we've had a circuit court come in and say, no, this is not.
But that doesn't have anything to do with the advisory question.
What I'm saying is
that's a whole different process.
I know it's a different process, but it brings it to a higher level of we're doing a deep dive and we've got a lot more information. Where if you have somebody from Wheeler County that hasn't researched this at all and just moves forward,
they're still liable. They're still up for lawsuit.
Yeah, no, fair. But I'm just.
We're
just trying to do our homework. And again, sorry, Angie, what was that?
What is the wording that we need?
That's what I'm trying to figure out, and that's what I hope to have by the middle of next week.
Okay.
With an attorney.
We're going to work our way around, and I see your hand, but we're going to go here and then.
In the email that I received, it talked about the attorneys that you guys are talking to, and it said that you're talking to a leftist attorney, and so the people are leaning towards going with what they're saying. Why can't we have a conservative attorney?
Who sent you that email?
The county.
I'm certain we never said there was. No, I'm certain that we never said a leftist attorney. This attorney came over from the Willamette Valley. Well, there may be some conflation going on because this was an attorney that came over from Multnomah County.
Yeah,
correct?
no, but I mean, I know him.
So that was
not
what was
by
said.
no means a leftist.
You can. Yeah.
And my experience with most attorneys are they're not left or right. They're just greedy.
You had a question.
I don't know if you've had feedback from conservative legislators, but if I was a conservative legislator in the western part of the state, I would be reluctant to let go of this conservative bloc because I would be losing allies in the legislature. I mean, it's like they would feel like you're dooming us to be Less.
Well,
There's no chance of us having a divided.
I get what you're saying. Yeah, then they can never be in charge.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
You're basically cementing them as a political So
This is Oregon.
That's why we're right. So we reached out, and I personally have reached out to every legislator in Oregon, left, right, west side, east side. I have not heard back from any conservative Republican legislators on the west side saying that they don't support our movement. I have heard back from several that have said, hey, if you guys can make this happen, more power to you, and you know, maybe I'll think about moving to Central Oregon. You know, like so. It's an understandable, you know, concern, but I haven't heard that personally.
Okay, good.
Yes.
Just a real brief one. We've heard about the cost of an election. What is the value of our voice being heard? That's what, you know, we look at the cost, but what is our value of our voice being heard? That's all I got.
Fair point.
Did you have a question, Jeff?
So all that I was saying is that there's a process, right? So we understand what the process is. We understand where the roadblocks are. I think probably the most applicable thing, at least for me, would be either a simple document, something along the lines of canned letters, that we could all just distribute with a standard, consistent opinion, so that our voices are heard. And I can help you with this if you'd like, Matt. But I think we're all saying the same things, but I'm trying to look at how do we move forward, right? And I think we understand why. I think we got that down. I think we understand the bottlenecks. I think we're going to work through, and I was just whispering to the judge, that we're going to understand a flow chart, or decide or think about how does a flow chart work. So how is this movement actually going to happen? And maybe we can start to think about time limits, so that we start setting expectations. But let's maybe think about a run book or some sort of a consistent communication that we can distribute to everybody with email contacts, with phone contacts, that makes it simple for all of our voices to be heard, with area and space for that to be repetitive.
Hey, that's good. To piggyback on that, you know, I would encourage, if you're interested in this movement, go sign up for our email list. We have the ability to break it out by county, and so we can send out direct messages to people by county.
I think this is a canned message for all the counties.
Well, yeah.
But that's why I'm saying
Sure.
This could be something that can scale.
But if you sign up and you live in Crook County, then if we have a Crook County specific thing and we want to get a hold of anybody that was here tonight, then we can send it just to Crook County folks, and we don't have to bother Jefferson County folks who already voted.
Let's make it simple.
Real quick before you move on, the only thing I would say is canned letters are less effective than a phone call or a personal letter.
A standard script.
I just think maybe talking points or something along those lines. Because I know when I got them on Lemon Gulch from a bunch of the bikers sent them to me from Benton, and I just delete. I mean, I don't, you know, if I get a canned letter from somebody that doesn't live in my county, not that that would be this situation, but I just have no interest in hearing that noise.
Have you seen any evidence of corporate lobbying from the large data center companies against getting this onto the ballot? Or conversely, have you talked to them and do they support?
No one either. I haven't seen any evidence of, you know, people ask me this. I'm the spokesperson for the movement. I don't think I've introduced myself, but my name is Matt McCaw. I'm the spokesperson for the movement. And I get asked that a lot about like organized opposition. And to date, we have not run into organized opposition. That may come as we're making more progress, but currently we haven't seen that. Mike, I'm not aware of any as far as that goes. But we also don't have any like corporate sponsorship behind us either. This is all citizen-led grassroots at this stage.
I'm going to just precursor by saying that tonight I came for information purposes only. I watched a lot of my friends flee to Idaho the last couple of years, and they're running into just as much tyranny on that side. It's just a different type. So they have a corrupt right where we have a corrupt left. And so I just want to make sure everybody knows where I do agree with a lot of this about the more like-minded values and the economic benefit. It's not a fix-all where all of a sudden life is perfect and we can just go to sleep again. But with all that being said, I do think everybody should have a voice and get to vote on it. And if it's sitting on the Senate President's desk, not assigned to a committee, then the very first call to action for this group should be to call Senator Rob Wagner and tell him to get it into a committee.
Absolutely.
We ask one of the committees to tell us which one to request.
Well, it may be in committee.
It
may have gone to committee, but the
committee chair is aware of it too.
yeah. Senator Lieber is the committee chair.
Who's the co-chair that would be more helpful? Do you know what committee it's in?
Rules.
Is it rules?
Rules Committee.
Senate Rules.
Okay. Yeah, I should have been more clear about that. But yes, because Senator Lieber came out about a week ago or so and said she has no intention of moving that. So, but yes, again, contacting
That
legislators.
everybody that's on that Senate Rules Committee needs to hear from people every single day to put pressure to get it on the schedule for a public hearing would be the first step. And then the second part that's more of a question to you is, if we got that public hearing and then we reached out to our reps, like Vicki Breeze-Iverson, can we work around whether or not we had this on the ballot as a county, because now our rep knows that we would like to be at the table when they have this discussion?
Yeah, so there actually is no requirement that you ever ask the people at all. Two state legislatures can do this, and they don't ever have to ask voters if that's what they wanted. There are representatives that can do it. And that's part of the reason why we kind of stopped. After we ran into these roadblocks last year, I kind of made the decision as the Crook County lead that I was just going to focus on the state level. I wasn't going to beat my head against a wall, because we could still move forward with the movement. So yes, we can still have a seat at the table, and I highly encourage all of you, let Representative Breeze-Iverson know that you support this and that you want her to support this and advocate for this to happen. Because like I said, we had a House bill. We could not find a representative on this side of the mountains to move that forward. And so we would love to have some more support. But that's going to have to come from hearing from their constituents and exactly what you're talking about. Any other questions? Yes.
Yeah, I have a question for Seth. You said that there's the new attorney that you're going to consult with. What is that attorney's expertise?
Constitutional law and some different. I think he's a really good fit for this conversation. And I talked to him, and he said he would look into it, and he thought he could find some ways that we could move forward.
Can we have his name, please?
What's that?
Can we have his name?
Sure. Aaron, well, let me make sure he's, you're going to find out eventually. Aaron Landau. Landau, yeah. He most recently helped with some issues we were having down at the library about if certain books could or could not be put in a separate section. And he was the one who helped me to articulate to the library board that they were able to put them in a separate section. They are on their own decision making, and they decided not to. But the county did share with them that they were legally able to do that, and that was not putting themselves or the county in any kind of legal danger. And that's why I thought this would be a really good fit for that attorney.
Any other questions?
I have one more.
Okay.
If I can. Okay, I'm not a naysayer by any means, but so we understand the Oregon and the Idaho's reasons why they would like to do this. Is there any federal legislative changes that might make the federal government not want to do this? Like, will it change the House of Representatives?
It's a great question. Yeah. So moving 400,000 people potentially could move our one district that we're in. That's Representative Vince could move that to Idaho. So there is the potential that there could be one congressional district that switched from Oregon to Idaho. Now, how much
electoral votes?
It would change one electoral vote in the state of Oregon and the state of Idaho.
Would what?
How much it would change one electoral vote if that were to happen. How much influence that would have on whether the federal, U.S. Congress decided to approve this, I have no idea. It'd be 1 out of 538 electoral college votes, essentially.
And it's a Republican to a Republican.
He's already a Republican. And I'm not even sure, they just redistricted. I'm not sure exactly when or if that would happen, because it's all based on population. And I think each representative right now is covering around 700,000 or 800,000 people, and we're only talking about moving 400. So, again, that would have to be one of those things that got figured out. We just have to get into the process to figure that out.
Thank you.
2 more questions, and then we'll wrap it up.
Okay, so
I really appreciate the time that you guys are investing in. And I have to say the whole idea of moving the border is an exciting one, but I think that it's important to do a balanced approach. Like we heard the legal side of it tonight. I think that's important. I know that it's important to many to be represented fairly, but what about the educational component? I mean, there's a lot of, the first thing that comes to mind is Obamacare. Nobody knew what was in that darn thing until it passed, and then, all age broke loose. So, concerns that would affect the population, like health care, water rights, those intricate little areas of concern. When do we find out about that?
Great question. So the whole process of writing up an interstate compact and figuring out where to move the border would involve legislative hearings and committees and study groups and all those things to answer those questions. And like I said, that's where the county role would be. That'd be where our county court would be like, okay, Crook County folks, what issues do you want to make sure that we're advocating for that gets addressed that affects Crook County people? All those sorts of things, though, will be negotiated out. And we also, it would not be necessary if these two states come together and they say, here's where we're going to move the border, and here are the details of how all that's going to work. It would not be necessary to go back to a vote of those 15 counties, but we would propose that they would. That they would go back to the plebiscite vote and ask the people, now that you know the details, and we know you said you wanted to look into this, now that you know the details, do you still want to go forward with this? And that's what we would recommend as an organization, because again, our whole thing is getting people government they want that matches their values. And we don't want to take a bad situation and make it worse. We're trying to solve problems here.
So it just seems to me like, for example, today on Facebook, there was a thread going, and people were chiming in, and I don't know if what they were saying was true or not, but it was scary. So, if that's not squelched and there's not the education out there, those people are going to spread that negativity, and everything that you're doing is going to be for naught. I don't know.
And I think that's up to all of us to try to, combat that misinformation or scare tactics or whatever. We have plenty of naysayers. There's plenty of people that, think this would be the end of the world, or it'll never happen, or why are we wasting our time? But our job is just keep informing people, keep moving forward, and keep, like Mike said, we as a leadership team, as a whole group, we've gone with the approach of we're going to keep moving forward, and we're going to keep advocating for what people are saying they want, and we're not going to worry about how big the hill is. We're just going to keep taking steps up and keep taking bites off one at a time. Did you have one last question or comment?
Seth and I have worked together a lot over the years, and one thing that I can say is we've agreed, and we've also agreed to disagree, but he will always answer his phone. I don't know if he rolls his eyes when he sees my call or not.
I call you more often than you call me.
So what I can say, though, is the other two commissioners I haven't worked with as closely, but Seth will answer his phone, and the more he hears. So there was this little meeting down at the fairgrounds one time about Oregon Wild, and we had a small group of about 900 people show up. We were heard. So the voices can be heard if they're loud enough. And sometimes our voice with that little Oregon Wild meeting we had 900 people, we got heard. So there's ways.
Yep. So thank you guys. Thank you everybody for coming and giving up an hour and a half on your
Folks, from the very beginning, our policy was to do it the legal way, the right way. That nobody could come back at us and say, you took the funds, you did this, you did that. And it just ticks me off to deal with the Oregon 4-star system and trying to keep track of finances and stuff. But even when we have a penny of interest on a checking account, we report it, we follow it. We are not going to go into the civil disobedience into things. No way, no how. We're going to do it the legal way, the voice by the people.
If anybody wants to stick around, I know Sandy and Matt and myself and Mike can stick around and answer questions individually. Oh, there's lawn signs if you want to grab one, a brochure. Get signed up for our email and put in your county specifically. We're on social media, whatever you do, whether it's Facebook, Twitter, Telegram, whatever. And then, yeah, right. And then the biggest thing, contact your state legislators, contact your elected leaders. We've gone to the people, and the people are saying they want their elected leaders to do this. So now we need our elected leaders to hear from us more directly than just through our vote. To get them on board and get this moving. Oh, and go to our website, greateridaho.org, for updates and more information. So.